Imagine being born into one of the most powerful families in the country, and then after your parents, the founders of this house, disappear, all the responsibility falls on your shoulders. The problem is, even though he's strong, he can't use any magic. And in this world, magic defines who's who in the society. Way out into Zanshu province in the Chia kingdom, there was this super famous academy called South Wind. And at this academy studied a kid from a noble house. He was well known for being a little different, let's say. His name, our protagonist, is Li Luo. And man, the girls just adored him. Everywhere he went, he caught the attention of all the girls around there. He had good-looking hair, charming eyes, a real heartthrob. Plus, he was an amazing fighter with a sword. He could take on any warrior head-on, and even the strongest ones were jealous of his skills. But the warrior he was fighting at that moment was his friend, Zhao Kuo. And Zhao Kuo had a trick up his sleeve. He could use the power of the resonance. By activating his power, the level 5 Silver Bear Resonance, he landed a killer blow on our protagonist. The girls even tried to warn him of the danger, but it was too late. Our protagonist ended up losing the battle. Even being super skilled, Li Luo couldn't use resonance. The girls commented that his beauty was the opposite of his strength. In other words, as much as he had in looks, he seemed to lack in power. In terms of ability, right? They thought he was stronger than his friend Zhao Kuo. But if he had the power of resonance, he would have definitely won the fight easy. So everyone started saying that the protagonist had this empty resonance. They said that no matter how strong and good with a sword he was, he ended up being a useless warrior for not having any power. The fight was kind of unfair if the other opponent used resonance powers. Then the protagonist couldn't fight on equal footing. The folks there also mentioned that he's the master of the Luolan house, and that his parents were the youngest and most important vassals of the kingdom. The protagonist's family was crazy powerful, but 3 years ago his parents disappeared on the battlefield. Since then his house has been losing importance, and many members are starting to split, not knowing which way to go. Then the rumors start that the protagonist won't be able to lead the house. His friend asked the protagonist if he was okay, if he hadn't been hurt by the blow. He replied that everything was fine, that the fight was fair. The teacher who was organizing the battle, Chu Chayu, commented that he felt sorry for the protagonist. He said that his knowledge was out of the ordinary, that he even had more talent than his own parents. But unfortunately, he was born with empty resonance, so he couldn't use any power. Then they explained to us how this power of resonance works, which I personally thought was pretty cool. Human cultivation depends on resonance. Someone who absorbs the energy of heaven and earth through the resonance of nature is called a resonance of strength. There are various types of human resonance. The most common are elemental resonances, water, fire, earth, thunder, and beast resonances, which is what the protagonist's friend used. Among the elemental ones, there are many elements, the most common being those of heaven and earth. All levels of resonance are classified from 1 to 9. When children reach adolescence, a hole opens in their body. This point is called the resonance palace. When this happens, the person discovers which resonance best matches their body. In other words, discovers which power they can use. But in the case of our protagonist, Li Luo, this hole in his chest is empty. This reveals that he has no resonance at all. He's unable to use powers. This rare phenomenon is called empty resonance. As soon as he discovered that he had no power, his teacher demoted him from the first class to the second. When he was younger, still a child, no other student was a match for him, since no one there had resonance yet. But now, the protagonist's strength has decreased a lot, and if it continues like this, he won't be admitted to Rolling Star College. The universe of this story is huge, and there are some classes around here. People who have good command of a resonance are called cultivators because they cultivate resonance, get it? When a cultivator reaches the Duke class, he activates a second resonance palace in his chest. Then he can use a new type of power, and when he reaches the king stage, he opens a third resonance palace. But in this Chia kingdom, very few people have reached the Duke stage, and almost no one has heard of someone who reached the king class, and that's what makes the protagonist special. Although he's still at the initial level, his body doesn't just have one resonance palace, but 3. But there's a catch. He can't use any of these palaces. This makes people feel sorry for him. Even having 3 resonance palaces in his chest, that is, theoretically could use 3 types of powers. They're all empty. His friend asked if the problem of empty resonance still hadn't been solved, and he said no. Then the teacher announced that next month there would be the decisive test to enter the college, and told them to do their best. His friend said he was going to train his resonance power, and told the protagonist that if he managed to activate his power, he would defeat him easily. Then they said goodbye, and the protagonist just stood there, super bummed, because he knows his strength is limited since he can't use any power. As he was heading home, the mural at Southwind Academy displayed a hologram, and everyone down there looked up at the screen. Liluo already knew why everyone was looking. With her level 9 light resonance, her talent was crazy rare. She had been admitted to Whole Star College in a special way. She was a star of Southwind Academy, and her name was Jiang. She became the first person from the province to receive this honor in 100 years. That's why she was famous all over the country. All the students there, both boys and girls, looked at her with envy. But the protagonist wasn't one of them. The girl who almost all the students considered a goddess wasn't just a disciple of his parents. She also had an engagement with the protagonist. That's right, she was engaged to our protagonist. The top student in the galaxy was engaged to him. The protagonist met this girl when he was only 3 years old. At the time, his parents took a long trip and returned with Jiang, who was about 5 years old. His parents ended up accepting her as a disciple. And the two kids there, both the protagonist and the girl, had several disputes, and all of them ended with Liluo being defeated. When the girl turned 10, the protagonist's father was kinda drunk and ended up blurting out that he would like her to be his daughter-in-law. The next day, she handed a handwritten marriage proposal to Liluo's father. When his mother found out, both the protagonist and his father got a beating. The mother then asked the little girl to withdraw this marriage contract. But she was stubborn. She knelt silently in front of the protagonist's parents and didn't withdraw the request. The boy's parents had to accept the paper and keep it, pretending that it never existed. However, a few years later, the girl ended up revealing at the academy that she was engaged. This shook the entire province of Tianshu. The protagonist remembers that day and comments that luckily he wasn't at school at that moment. Otherwise, he would have been minced meat. He even mentions that thanks to his father, he's in a jam. After all, he's engaged to the most popular and strongest girl in the region. And out of nowhere, a girl named Daifa appears. She belongs to one of the 3 main families in Tianshu province. She asks why he likes to stand there, drawing the attention of others, and asks if he's trying to make someone jealous since he's engaged to the star of the country. She keeps insisting that he break off the engagement, as he's not good enough for this girl. After all, she's the most powerful at the academy, and he can't even use the power of resonance. Then she says that if he doesn't break off the engagement, he'll be in a lot of trouble. He turns to the girl and asks if that was a threat. Then she says that there are many other more powerful warriors, like Bei Kun of the Kun family, and that she hopes he stays away from Jiang. She also mentions that his family is losing importance, and that when his house falls, he'll no longer be respected. After all, it was his parents who won the honor, not him. The protagonist, out of patience for this annoying girl, says that she's absolutely right, and starts walking away, leaving her talking to herself. Then she starts yelling at him to break off the engagement. Suddenly, the girl sees someone and shuts up. Who had arrived there was Jiang in her carriage. On the imposing carriage, there was the symbol of the Luolan family, and the protagonist asks when she returned to the city. Jiang said that she arrived just now and came to pick him up for his birthday, as tomorrow he turns 17, and that, therefore, she has important business to deal with. The protagonist is surprised that she didn't forget his birthday and says that it's true, that tomorrow will be an important day. Then Jiang turns to that girl and, with an intimidating look, asks if her name is Daifa. The girl gets all excited to know that Jiang knows her name. Jiang then tells her to stop bothering Luolan, and warns that otherwise she will hoard her brother, who's at Rulestar College. Inside the carriage, the two start talking. She says that for having let slip that she was engaged, he ended up having several problems. Then she apologizes. The protagonist says that that's not a sincere apology, and that if she really wants to apologize, she should allow him to break off the engagement. Then she asks if that's what he really wants, and asks if he's afraid of having an engagement, and that this will bring him more problems. The protagonist says that he's afraid that she'll meet someone she really likes, and she replies that she doesn't like anyone, since they are engaged. The protagonist replies that she's very grateful for his parents having helped her, and that this engagement with him wouldn't be the best way to show gratitude, since it wasn't him who did anything for her, but his parents, and that he wasn't even asked if he would like to marry her. She was a little surprised. After all, a pretty girl like that, getting rejected by a weakling like him. Then she asks for forgiveness and says that she really didn't consider his feelings, but she also said that in the Luolan house, when someone has a disagreement, they have to have a duel, and the winner decides what to do. The protagonist knows that he has no chance of winning against her, since she's of the general class, which is a very high class. So he says that they've been in the same family for years, and that he knows she doesn't really like him, and that this engagement has no meaning without a base of affection. Jiang said that there's some truth in his words, but that she has no romantic interest in anyone. And at least for the protagonist, she said that she doesn't hate him. So it's okay to marry since she doesn't like anyone. The protagonist thinks, at least she doesn't hate me. Then he replies that he doesn't need that kind of gratitude. So just so you understand, since he's still very young, she's in charge of the house. He'll only be able to take over when he becomes strong enough. Therefore, he asks her to keep the Luolan house under control until he can assume leadership. Thus she will have returned the favors of his parents, instead of returning them in the form of this engagement. Then she starts tapping her fingers on the table, and a deafening silence fills the room. She doesn't say anything, and the protagonist starts sweating cold, waiting for her answer. Then Jiang gives a sigh, and asks if he really doesn't like her, and why he's doing everything to prevent them from getting married. In response, he says that she really is very charming, and that she attracts all people of his age, and that he would be a hypocrite if he said that he doesn't like her. But he doesn't want that kind of commitment. Then Jiang punches the table, saying that he has the gift of gab, and with a somewhat sad face says that she feels that he's telling the truth, and that when he takes over the Luolan house, he can cancel this engagement. She was surprised by what she heard and asks if he's really sure about that, and that if the engagement is really broken, he will never have a chance like this again. She was giving the last warning, looking at the protagonist, because she felt a little hurt that he didn't want to marry her. Then he slams his hand on the table, and gets closer to her face. He says that he really doesn't care about this engagement, because he wants to marry her of his own free will, and not because of an obligation, because of his parents. Then she gives a smile, a little relieved, and tells him to sit down, and that if he really wants to try, she'll give him that chance. She says that she'll be waiting for him at Rolling Star College, and that this will be the first step. If he can't do this, if he can't get into this college, he can forget about this contract. Then he, confidently, says that she can keep waiting. In the Chia Kingdom, there are two special forces that are neutral: Rolling Star College and the Golden Dragon Treasure House. This house is so powerful that they are involved in storing goods, auctions, exchanges, and other businesses. The power of the Golden Dragon Treasure House was so strong that it made any other house look weak. Then Jiang took Liluo to the Golden Dragon Treasure House, and he's delighted when he arrives at this branch. Their financial resources were unimaginable. Even the protagonist's house, which was a large house, seemed tiny compared to the treasure house. Then the president of the branch welcomes the two and says that it's an honor to have them there. The girl introduces the protagonist and asks if the president could take them to the item. They go to the secret room, down in the basement, passing through an extensive path to get there, and the president said that this item was left by his father and mother, and that it could only be unlocked with his blood. Then the protagonist feels a chill, and mentions that he's feeling that this will change his destiny. Then he puts a drop of blood on the item, and a sphere appears. Jiang tells him to keep it, because his parents want him to open it only on his 17th birthday. However, he had already opened it, to her surprise. He gets extremely excited, saying that he's feeling that something very good is going to happen and that he's even nervous, and she's there in the corner, calling him a beast. As they leave the room, the president of the branch mentions that his niece is there, and that she also admires Jiang a lot, since they're at the same academy. The protagonist sees the girl and recognizes her right away, and starts sweating cold. This girl is called Lu, and gracefully she greets Miss Jiang. Jiang says that since she's studying at the same academy as Li Luo, they must know each other. The lady says yes, and that she has always been grateful for the advice he gave, but that in the last 2 years he doesn't seem to want to see her much. He's been avoiding the girl. Then the protagonist starts waving his hand and says that it's nothing like that she asked him for advice because he was the number one in the school, but now she's the number one. So it doesn't make sense for him to keep giving her tips. Jiang seems to be a little jealous and ends up walking ahead and leaving the protagonist behind. When saying goodbye, the president of the branch says that he heard that there will be important activities at the Luolan house. Jiang says that he's well informed, and replies that if she needs anything she can resort to him. Miss Lu is watching this protagonist leave, and this draws the attention of the president, who is her uncle. He asks if by chance she feels something for him, and she replies that she feels sorry for him, because he doesn't have the resonance activated, the empty resonance, and that if it weren't for that, he would be the biggest competitor in the academy since he's very skilled. The uncle says that that's good, since he's engaged, and that she should forget about him, since she deserves someone much better, a much more powerful guy. Upon arriving at the Luolan mansion, he said that it's much quieter than he usually sees it, and Jiang replies that it's because the headquarters was transferred to the capital, and that now the mansion is much quieter. Mr. Lu welcomes Jiang, saying that it's been a while since he saw her. Jiang then introduces her assistant. Her name is Kai Wei, and the protagonist can't help but look at her. The assistant says that it's a pleasure to meet him and calls him young master. The protagonist gets all giddy responding, and Jiang says that she will take care of the house's affairs and that he will be informed of everything. The protagonist finds it strange that she suddenly brought the assistant to take over the business there at the house and asks if there's something wrong. She says that he's been in the city of Southwind for quite some time, but that he must have already heard about what's happening in his house. Then, she says that in this country, only people in the Duke's stage can build a house, and that in the Chia Kingdom there are 5 main houses, and the Luolan house is one of the 5, and among these it was the one that rose the fastest, because at that time his parents reached the Duke's stage together, and they were extremely powerful, and when it came to assets, his house was weaker than the others. However, the talent and strength of his parents were enough to smooth out this difference. But after the parents disappeared, the situation of the Luolan house wasn't good. With the loss of these 2 main pillars, the power of the house was decreasing rapidly, and that, in the last 2 years, there have been forces threatening the existence of the house. And in the face of this threat, Jiang gave up some family properties to buy time, and that the influence has decreased considerably in the last 2 years, and that now the external pressure has ended up decreasing. However, internal pressure has increased. The protagonist asks if she's referring to Pei Hao, and the assistant asks how he knows that. The protagonist says that he's the only one who can compete with Zhang, since Pei Hao was a registered disciple of his parents. When Pei Hao was a teenager, his parents took him in. He worked hard there in the house, and the parents ended up accepting him as a registered disciple. With this identity, his position increased considerably, and when Li Luo's parents disappeared, he was already quite relevant in the Luolan house. And over the years, he ended up making important decisions without authorization. And as he has a lot of prestige, almost half of the division leaders are close to him, and this ends up being terrible news. Jiang says that the damage could have been much greater if the parents hadn't named her as leader before disappearing. Then the protagonist thanks her very much. She says that she's not doing anything too much because they are engaged, and she also has a part in the house. Then the protagonist realizes that she spoke bluntly, without beating around the bush. She's not doing this just for him, she's doing this for herself too. She says that since his parents disappeared, the house has been very agitated, and that Pei Hao will talk to her tomorrow in the capital, and that they probably won't reach an agreement, and that the worst can happen. The Luolan house can be divided, and that would be a great blow. And that she's also investigating and thinks that there may be external forces behind this. Probably other houses are involved. The protagonist apologizes for not being able to help, and she says that he doesn't need to worry, that the house is unstable at this moment, but when he takes over, she'll deliver the house intact. Then they finish talking, and she leaves. The protagonist thinks that no matter how strong his house is, that's useless, because in this world, in this universe, only your own strength is what matters. And if one day he manages to reach the Duke's stage or the King's stage, all the problems would be solved. Then the protagonist goes to sleep, holding that sphere that his parents left for him. He keeps wondering what had been kept there all this time. And as he was trying to solve the enigma of the sphere, it starts to shine. Then a hologram of his parents appears. They say that their son must be turning 17, that's why he's seeing this message, and that probably by this time he's already a loser. However, the protagonist opened this message one day before his birthday. He was very eager. He seems not to believe what he's seeing, and the father jokes saying that probably he's feeling sorry for himself. And the mother replies that it's because of him having empty resonance in his body. They tell him not to worry because the empty resonance was observed by them in a special way, because he has in his body the 3 resonance palaces. Li Luo is surprised to learn that his parents already knew about his condition, and asks if this has to do with their disappearance, and questions where his parents are at this very moment. The father says that he shouldn't feel sorry for himself for having empty resonance, and that this isn't necessarily something bad. In fact, it means that his body is the strongest in the world, and that because of this he should feel happy. The protagonist then says that his father doesn't need to try to console him, and the father explains that he was born with this empty resonance, and that therefore he's unable to absorb and refine the celestial energy of the earth, but that there's a solution for that. Since his palace is empty, he just needs to try to fill it. Li Luo hears all that and mentions that he's never heard of filling, and wonders if that would really work. The mother said that it's impossible to do that by ordinary means, but that they've been trying to find a way to do that since they learned of their son's condition. She said that heaven helps those who help themselves, and that therefore they finally found the solution. They say that after reading several ancient books, they came to a method called divine forging. Then she gives a great explanation about how this darling resonance works through divine forging, and that this is very powerful because the darling resonance contains 2 attributes, one that plays a main role and another that plays a supporting role. The protagonist gets extremely excited, saying that today is the day he stops being a wimp. Then the mother explains how the elements of resonance work, like lightning, fire, thunder, and that each has its peculiarity. The father says that nothing is perfect, and that the initial level of the darling resonance doesn't exceed level 4, and the protagonist thinks that this level is really a bit low, and that there's a big difference from the level 9 light resonance, which is Zhang's. The mother then says that even though it seems to be a low level, he can improve it through other means, such as, for example, magical items. He can refine his resonance through specific techniques, and that the empty resonance is the most powerful because of that. He's already born with the ability to learn various attributes. The protagonist is thrilled to hear that his resonance is the strongest in the world. Then she says that they took a piece of his soul and some of his blood, and that they did a refinement, and that they put it inside this crystal ball. Then he thanks and dedicates this symbolic hug to them, and that now he's going to turn things around and stop being a wimp. The father gives a sigh and says that he has the last warning. The darling resonance will absorb the essence of his blood. Therefore, it was mandatory that he be at least 17 years old to be able to withstand the loss of blood essence, and that if he's not strong enough, he won't succeed. Therefore, he needs to reach the Duke stage and evolve his life level to the maximum level in at least 5 years. Otherwise, if he doesn't manage to get strong and evolve his life, he will die. At that moment, all the brightness in the protagonist's eyes goes away, and he gets thoughtful. The parents say that no matter what he does, they will always be rooting for him. Then Li Luo already knows that he has to decide if he wants to live for a long time being weak, or if he wants to be a short-lived guy, since it's extremely difficult to reach the Duke level. In 5 years, he'll be 22, and in all the history of the country, it seems that there has never been such a young Duke. And with the money that his family has, he could lead a quiet life. But if he chooses this darling resonance inside the crystal ball, he won't be able to waste time, and he will need to squeeze every last drop of his potential and fight against all other odds to try to have a chance of surviving. Thus, with normal instances, it would be very difficult for him to reach Jiang, but now there was a glimmer of hope. If he can really activate his power of resonance, he would become extremely powerful, and would reach and be able to get to Rollstar College, and thus finally cancel his engagement with Jiang. Then he gets undecided whether or not he should accept, since his life is at stake. He then says that giving up is not an option. Then, with a confident look, he says to his parents that he has always had the ambition to be the strongest, and that he doesn't just want to surpass Jiang, but to surpass his own parents. Then they reach out and say that they won't be disappointed, that in 5 years he will reach the Duke stage. Then he accepts the challenge. Then the protagonist touches that sphere, and it starts to shine. Inside contain the darling resonance and the art of resonance of divine forging. His parents say that he has already made the choice. Then the father gets anguished, and at the same time proud to have him as his son, and says that the path will be very difficult. The mother reveals, then, which darling resonance they refined for him. The resonance is of level 4, and the element is water, and complemented by the element of light. The protagonist isn't very happy to learn that his resonance is of the water type, and his parents tell him not to be sad, and not to underestimate this element, since the strongest element, if used correctly, can be the most OP element of all, and that they chose these two types of element because the element of resonance can nourish someone's injured body. And the second reason is because they want him to become a resonance refiner, and these two elements will help him in the future. Then the protagonist's parents selected these two strongest elements because most people see the water element as if it were weak. However, if it's used correctly, it can be the most invincible element of all. They then explain that the other refiners only have the water element or only have the light element. And if by chance the Llewellyn house fails, the protagonist, at least, will have good skills to be able to support himself. The parents say that, for sure, he'll succeed in 5 years, and that they trust their son. They also say that they know that their son is worried about them, but that he doesn't need to worry. They wish that nothing bad happens to Llewellyn until he can see his parents again, and that the protagonist will only be able to meet his parents again when he reaches the Duke stage. So, there's already a mystery in the air, right? What could be happening with his parents? Where could they be? Then, the protagonist thanks his parents there, and says that they will be proud when they meet. And that from today, he has a resonance, he's no longer a person with empty resonance. Sometime later, Llewellyn wakes up there, kind of dazed without knowing where he is. Then he sees the silhouette of his assistant on the other side of the door. She's asking if he's okay, and he replies that he just woke up and if by chance they need him. The girl notices that the master's voice is weak. Then she says that Jiang asked to let him know that the new leaders of the Llewellyn house have arrived and that he needs to be prepared. The protagonist gets up there a little weak, and when he looks at himself in the mirror, he realizes that his hair has turned gray, and that now he only has 5 years to live, and that he needs to get strong quickly. His hair turned gray, and the aesthetic, in my opinion, got even cooler, and he comments that he's feeling his power emanating. Then the palaces in his chest are activated, and he realizes that the problem of an empty resonance has been solved. Liluo opens the door of his room and says that his journey is just beginning. In the mansion of the Luolan house, several leaders are discussing the path that the house should follow. Pei Hao begins to manipulate the other leaders. On one side were the 4 leaders who support Jiang, on the other side were the neutral leaders, and in the center were the 3 leaders who support Pei Hao. He starts exchanging barbs there with Jiang, saying that the young master is late and that he doesn't value the house. Jiang defends the protagonist and says that Pei Hao is being quite impatient and that he needs to wait. This malicious guy says that the protagonist hasn't arrived yet, so they should hold the meeting without him, since he doesn't care about the Luolan house there. He begins there in a very cunning way to manipulate all the other leaders because he himself wants to become the head of the house. He asks if there are no objections and that he himself will start the meeting. However, at that moment, the protagonist arrives and says that he has become bossy and that his parents would be surprised to see how he is today. Liluo arrives in this surprising pose, and everyone gets scared, even Pei Hao and Jiang, because they didn't expect the protagonist to appear looking like this. His hair is kind of different, and the color of his skin has also changed. Pei Hao even mentions that Liluo's face is pale and his hair is gray, and that it looks like he's about to die, and that for not looking healthy he can't guide the Luolan house. Jiang gets furious, and Pei Hao ends up apologizing, saying that his mouth is too big. The protagonist says that it's alright and that he's just showing his true nature, and that he can't do anything against that, because Pei Hao is very strong. Pei Hao agrees, saying that he is strong indeed, and that the house isn't living its days of glory, and that the former masters, the protagonist's parents there, disappeared and didn't leave any leader strong enough, and that if it weren't for Jiang, he would have taken over the house and would have put it on the track. Then the meeting begins, since the young master has arrived, and the girl there, Jiang, asks why Pei Hao didn't pay for the gold piece since he has 3 leaders of the financial branch there under his control. Pei Hao says that the storage of riches was burned, and that everyone knows that, and that because of this fire they don't have money to pay this year. Jiang suspects the answer. Then he reveals that the 3 leaders will not pay the contributions from now on. One of the leaders there who supports Liluo asks if he's trying to bring down the Luolan house. He replies that he doesn't want the house to fall, and that he could very well pay these tributes. However, he wants the young master to grant a condition. He will only pay the tributes if the young master, our protagonist, does something for him. Then the protagonist asks what this condition is, and he says that he would like him to break off his engagement with Jiang. Liluo stares at him for a few seconds while Jiang is in the background extremely enraged. Then she releases her light resonance and pounces on him with her gleaming sword. Pei Hao prepares to attack her as well. Then they clash, and the energy is spread throughout the hall. She accuses him of having stolen a lot of money from the house. And he recognizes that even being in the initial stage of general, she's no weaker than him. And then she tells him to take back what he said, if he doesn't want to die, and says that he shouldn't interfere in her business. Pei Hao turns to the protagonist and says that he's an innocent boy getting into trouble because of his wealth, and that he doesn't deserve the Luolan house, not even Jiang. The protagonist asks if he thinks that he should give up everything, and if by chance he's not worried that his parents might come back someday. Then this jerk starts laughing and says that the protagonist must be dreaming, and his parents will never return. He says that the master isn't strong enough since he was born with the empty resonance palace, and that therefore he doesn't deserve to lead this house. Luolan says that unlike his parents, they were kind to Pei Hao, and asks why he has all this resentment. This guy says that his parents knew that he wanted to be a true disciple, not a registered disciple, and that he did everything to achieve his goals, but they never said yes. Then he got very frustrated, because he gave everything he had for the house and got no return. The protagonist stares at him, and with a serious look he says that his branch will only follow instructions in the future if he agrees. And everyone there gets furious and gets up, and in a sarcastic way, Pei Hao asks if, by chance, they want to attack him, and that none of the guys there are a match for him except for Jiang, who could even have a fair fight. He mentions before leaving that he doesn't want to bring down the Luolan house, but to make it stronger. Then he calls Jiang to ally with him, saying that if it weren't for the master, the house would still be relevant. Then he also says that he won't give up and raises a medallion. This medallion is given only to top-level generals, and is a fair symbol, which should symbolize neutrality. Then Pei Hao explains that the protagonist's father made a rule that if a man had the support of 2 elders but 4 leaders, he could compete for the position of head of the house at the sacrifice ceremony. and he says that he wants the entire house for himself. Everyone gets nervous, saying that he's ungrateful. Then he says goodbye, saying that the protagonist should value his last year there, since when the ceremony arrives, the house will be completely controlled by him, and the protagonist remains silent, without saying anything. Hours later, everyone was anguished there, but the protagonist along with Jiang remain calm. They talk there with the other 6 leaders and discuss the matter, and think what they can do to solve this. Jiang goes to the protagonist later and says that he was very calm, but she believes that inside he was dying of anger, and he confirms. He says that he really was very angry, that if he had the strength, he would chop Pei Hao into pieces. And she praises him, saying that he kept his composure and didn't get carried away. She also says that she greatly admires his calm way of dealing with things, and that he would be a great leader. And Liuluo understands the problems that Jiang has gone through all these years, and thanks her for all this time she has been in command, which were probably difficult years. She tells him not to worry about Pei Hao, because she herself will take care of him, since in the agreement she says that she would deliver the house intact to the protagonist. Thus they would break off the engagement, and that he should focus on the exam to be able to enter Rollstar College. But if he thinks it's not possible, he could tell her. At that moment she was a little suspicious if the protagonist was really going to be able to enter the college, since it was a very difficult test, and he didn't have the power of resonance. She was kind of losing hope in him. However, at that moment he asks her to hold his hand. She gets a little embarrassed, but ends up giving in and holding his hand. And he starts pulsing his water resonance, and she gets a little surprised and asks if he did something to solve the problem of empty resonance. And he says yes. Then, she gives a sigh and says that she finally had good news today. She tells him not to believe what that disgusting guy said about his parents, that they would never come back, and that she trusts that they are somewhere safe. The protagonist said that he also believes in that. Then she says goodbye and says that she's going to the capital, and that the next time she sees him, she hopes that he's admitted to Rollstar College. Then she says goodbye and leaves. The protagonist then ends up asking his assistant to buy some potions of the water of spiritual light. He would like the level 4 potions, and she gets thoughtful about why he needs these potions, since he was born with empty resonance. But she asks how many potions he wants. Kind of embarrassed, the protagonist said that he needs 50, and she gets scared, since it was a very high amount. Each of these potions was very expensive. They cost about 1,000 gold bars, and 50 potions would cost 50,000 gold bars. And as the Luolan house was in financial difficulties, spending this money would be a somewhat reckless way. But she remembers that Jiang Guedes said that she should do everything that the young master asked. Then she said that she was going to buy them for him, and the protagonist thanks her. She gets worried since the house is living a critical moment, and the master, the protagonist, in addition to being new, seem not to follow the rules. Then she gets worried, thinking that the protagonist doesn't know what he's doing. In the mansion of the Luolan house, the protagonist goes to the library to look for some books about resonance. Upon arriving there, the librarian says that it has been quite some time since his master has appeared. Our protagonist, he doesn't go to the library very much. Then the protagonist asks for all the books of energy, grade 4. The employee there doesn't understand why he's asking for this, since he doesn't have resonance. Well, he thinks, right at least. Then the library employee there ends up leaving all the scrolls of energy guidance techniques that are there in that library. In total, there are 28 techniques. Then the protagonist gets happy, thanking his parents for the possibility of him learning magic. Then it's explained to us how learning a technique works. As the protagonist didn't have resonance, his manifestations were empty. Now with his water and light resonance, he needs to evolve them, using techniques learned through books and potions. He spent several hours in the library reading those books, and among all those scrolls, he was undecided between 3 of them. He needed to choose a technique to be able to focus. Since he didn't know how to use magic, he needed to choose one to give 110% of himself, to be able to learn it. Then he ends up choosing the frigid technique. Since the water resonance techniques are countless, he needed to choose one to focus there, at that moment, and later he would focus on some light technique. Then inside the library, there in his mansion, there's a special room, which was built to train, and only his parents and Jiang had trained inside that room. Then Liluo opens the door, this gigantic door, and comes across a very strong light. That room was made purely of gold, and the energy that was inside caused the resonances to be purified, thus making the result of his training faster. He was able to evolve quickly. Then he focuses as he feels the resonance flowing to his body. The energy of water is the strongest because it's light and soft, and the energy of light is the purest of all. Both energies flow there around the body of our protagonist. and after some time he finally managed to manifest his frigid power. His power of resonance was at the 3rd level. Time was passing and he was feeling that he was getting stronger and stronger, and it was no use if he kept training all day. He had a limit in terms of evolution, and there came a time when he got tired and couldn't progress anymore. And the day of the final exam to enter the academy was also approaching, and he needed to raise his level of resonance. And his goal there was to enter Rollstar Academy. However, with the level 3 resonance, he wasn't going to succeed. Then he set a goal to reach at least level 5 this week. But even so, level 5 wasn't enough. The level of the skies goes from 1 to 10. Then the protagonist decides that he's going to rest for today. A house employee appears and says that Miss Kai has prepared the things that he had asked for and left them in his room. He gets surprised when he arrives there, because she had prepared everything quite quickly. The enhancement potion was already ready, and Liluo mentions that only cultivators of water and light can use this item. Therefore, it was a very rare item, and it was also very valuable. The purer the magical spiritual light, the more effective it is, and its results should also be better. Then this potion had a 58% degree of effectiveness, remembering that the protagonist will only be able to evolve his resonance from level 5 onwards with the use of these potions or other magical items. He can use a limited amount of potions, because he was born with this empty resonance, which is a very rare condition. Therefore, he can use several potions. Normal people can't use this many potions. Therefore, he was able to evolve in a very fast way compared to other people. He feels that he's getting strong in a very fast way. However, if he only gets stronger with these potions, it gets very expensive, because he would need about 100 bottles since the effectiveness is only 58%. All this to reach level 5. And to reach level 6, the 6th degree of water manifestation, it would be necessary another 200 to sell your potion bottles, which would give more or less 200,000 gold coins. And to evolve to the next level, it would cost more or less 1 million gold coins. Then it really gets very expensive for him to get stronger. During these next 2 days, he focuses on frigid meditation, alternating with light meditation, and thus he managed to reach the 4th level until the last potion was used. In the Elder's house, his assistant, Miss Kai, talks to the administrator. She said that the house's income has decreased drastically, and that the administrative city there, the city of Luolan, even having several properties such as pharmacies, mining companies, and among others, wasn't giving enough profits. Therefore, they would need to close some establishments. Some families there in the city were owing money to them. Then they would have to ensure that these families start paying as soon as the establishments are reopened. At that moment, Li Luo arrives there, and the lady asks what the young master wants. A little embarrassed, he says that he needs her help. He asked her to buy other potions, since he used all the 50 that she had bought. However, now he needed 100 units. Then she remains silent, thinking if that's really true. Then she asks if he really needs 100 potions. Even more the level 4 ones that he was asking for, which were even more expensive. He says yes, and she gets nervous, slamming her hand on the table. Mrs. Kai asks if he's trying to make her resign, and he says that he would never do that, since she's a great employee. Then she takes a deep breath and apologizes for having been aggressive, and Li Luo stays there listening in the corner. She asks then if someone is trying to deceive him so that he buys these potions, and he tells her not to make that kind of assumption because he really needed them for his personal use. Thus the lady then asks why he needs these potions since they're very expensive. And he tells a reason. He says that his parents left the acquired resonance for him through a magical item, and that he needed these potions to strengthen himself. The assistant asks if this technique is a secret technique passed down by his parents, and that, if that's really it, she'll buy them for him, and she ends up feeling relieved to know that he's not a loser. The protagonist apologizes for having made things difficult for her, and she says that it's not a problem, since it's to evolve his resonance, she'll do everything possible because it will be worth it. Li Luo thanks and says that she's the best. The assistant tells him not to worry since she will take care of everything, and tells him not to underestimate her abilities. She thinks that if he really gets strong, he'll make a beautiful pair for Jiang, but that he has a long way to go. In the next few days, he doesn't go to school. He just stayed training in the library to be able to improve his resonance. Then he finally managed to reach level 5 of his resonance. A few days later, he returns there to Southwind Academy, and people get surprised to see him, since it's been some time since he went to the academy. They also wonder if he dyed his hair and that apparently he gave up on taking the exam, since he has little chance of passing. His teacher welcomes him and says that the issue of his empty resonance must have brought him a lot of pressure, but that he can't give up. The protagonist says that he hasn't given up, and the teacher insists, saying that this is the last week and that he didn't show up at the academy. That's why he thought he had given up and that he shouldn't be bumming around and that he should be training. Then the protagonist apologizes and says that he won't do that again. Inside the classroom, his friend asks what happened to his hair, and he says that he dyed it and this color is called Yes, Grandpa, and that it's in fashion. The teacher says that the day of the exam is coming. Then he praises some students because they reached the 6th grade resonance. These students are Zhao Kuo and Nordo Interval. They keep talking. His friend says that the bastard of Bacon had beaten him and that he doesn't know what he has in his head, because in recent days he's been bothering the people there at the 2nd Academy and they weren't able to take it anymore. Then the protagonist's friend ended up fighting with this Bacon, and as the bully is quite strong, the protagonist's friend and Zhao Kuo came out quite hurt. Then he alerts the protagonist that if Bacon comes to make trouble with him, he shouldn't fight and look for his friend, that he will defend him. Then Lilo realizes that this bully, in fact, wants to fight with him, and that his friend took a beating just to protect him. Then he gets very serious and says that he won't let his friend get beaten. Later, during the resonance classes there, they go to the north of the academy in the wide forest. This is a gigantic forest, where each of the leaves there has about 2 meters in length, and these leaves are magical leaves where a person fits comfortably on top, and they use them to be able to cultivate resonance. This gigantic tree blooms every day at noon, leading the leader of the school there. These leaves have 3 classifications of power, being them the golden leaves, the silver leaves, and the bronze level leaves. Each of these leaves contains 3 layers, except for the golden leaf, which contains only 1 layer, and only 10 golden leaves were distributed in the 2nd Academy, because most of the leaves were distributed in the 1st Academy. I didn't mention it in part 1, but Southwind Academy has several rooms, and the 1st Academy is where the best students are, and the 2nd Academy is where the students a little inferior are, and leading the leader, all the students run there to see these leaves emerge. The protagonist laments having thrown his golden leaf away when he realized that he had no manifestation at all. His resonances were empty. Then he says that he will have to settle for the silver leaf. Defa, that girl there from part 1, says that the protagonist missed the whole week for fear of being beaten by Bacon, and that's why he wasn't coming to class. And this redhead girl keeps saying that it's a waste for him to have a beautiful look, since he's good looking, but he has no magic at all. And her friend says that she remembers when he was in the 1st Academy and that all the girls liked him. However, now that he has no more resonance and all the other students have, it has become out of fashion to be a fan of him. That is, when he was still strong, all the girls liked him. But now that he's weak, they get kind of ashamed to like him. While the protagonist was sitting there meditating, this Bacon, who is the bully, appears and starts provoking our protagonist, saying that he hoped that he had given up on the exam. Lilo there has few ideas and calls this guy stupid, saying that his IQ is low, since he really thought that he would give up on taking the exam, and that he would have missed it only for a fear of being beaten by him. Then the bully gets nervous, asking if by chance he's not afraid of being beaten. Then he calls him for a duel, and Lilo replies that he just has no interest, that he won't waste his time. And the bully keeps yelling, saying that all the students of the 2nd Academy are cowards. Then he says there in a loud voice for everyone to hear that Lilo is in the 2nd Academy because of his problems, since he has no manifestation at all, and he's a weakling. At that moment, Zhao Kuo appears and defends the protagonist. The bully asks if he would like to be beaten again, and Lilo tells his friend not to pay attention to him. Then in a very sarcastic way, the protagonist tells his friend to write down the names of these idiots, that later he'll teach them all how to act in a civilized way. The bully asks if that's a threat, and the protagonist asks if he would like to test to see, and they keep staring at each other. The director of the academy, along with the teacher there from the 1st Academy, they keep watching that discussion. The teacher mentions that the genius parents of the Luolan house gave birth to a useless son. Then the protagonist teacher defends him, saying that that bully only looked for a fight because the other boy there had no resonance. The teacher of the 1st Academy said that disputes like that make competitiveness increase, and that that's good. Then they comment that the amount of golden leaves would be unequal, because the 1st Academy will gain many more leaves. And the teacher there of the protagonist says that this is not fair. Because of this, the director proposes a battle. Both academies will have to send 3 students to duel. However, the students couldn't exceed the 6th seal for the fight to be fair, and the winner of this battle would win 10 leaves. The teacher of the 2nd Academy says that he only has 2 students there in his room who managed to release up to the 6th seal, and the director told him not to worry. Even if he loses this dispute, he'll compensate him next year with 2 more golden leaves. Then the teacher ends up accepting. Then the teachers gathered the students there from the class and explained about this competition. And as soon as the students of the 2nd Academy knew, they exploded with rage, since the agreement said that if they lost this dispute, in addition to the 1st Academy winning 10 leaves, The loser would have to donate 5 leaves. And the chance for them there to win was very low, since the students of the first academy were much stronger, and moreover they only have 2 students with the 6th seal, which were Zhao Kuo and Yufeng. Then the girl asks her teacher who the 3rd student would be. Then the teacher analyzes the other participants and he sees that there's no one up to the task, and he ended up scaling Li Luo to duel. The teacher told him not to feel pressured, since he doesn't have much chance of winning, that it was only for him to tire the opponents. All this remembering is because nobody knows that the protagonist got the resonance of Darling, the resonance of Water and Light. Nobody there knows. Then the protagonist said that he wanted to be very discreet, but that there will be no way for him to disguise it. And with a malicious look, he said that his teacher doesn't know what he's talking about. Zhao Kuo arrives and slaps Li Luo on the back, asking if he was shocked with the news, and that he will have to fight against the extremely powerful grade 6 students. The news that the 1st and 2nd academy were competing to be able to win the golden leaves spread quickly, and thus several people appeared to watch this duel. Students from different academies went there to that tree to be able to watch a little action. The students of the 1st academy were extremely confident. While the students there of the 2nd academy were dying of fear, they were very nervous. Difa said that this competition makes no sense, and says that it only serves to entertain them a little. Then the girl asks if she likes this kind of spectacle, and she said that she's there only to have fun. Then they comment on who they think will win. Difa said that the 2nd academy only has 2 students who awaken the 6th seal, and the girl asks who would be the 3rd person who would fight there to complete the team. A mysterious boy appears saying that probably the 3rd member would be Li Luo. This boy is called Yufeng. He said that even though the protagonist has the empty resonance, he's still able to endure a little in the fight, since he's a great fighter. Then Difa gets surprised for him having appeared there and says that it even seems that he has ulterior motives. So she disguises herself while the young man looks at her. Then we already see that this guy is crushing on Difa. In fact, he's Difa's brother, and they end up saying there that the 2nd academy has no chance of winning. That in addition to them being weaker, they still count with the protagonist, who has no resonance at all, which ends up destabilizing the duel, thus leaving the team of the 2nd academy weaker. Lu adjusts his hair behind his ear and says that he believes that this time it'll be different. Then Yufeng keeps watching the protagonist, and it seems that he has a very great envy of him. And just by looking, you can see that this guy is dying of jealousy. The battle then will begin. The 3 students position themselves on the battlefield, and they decide that the first to fight will be our protagonist, since the intention is to make the other fighters get tired. His friend tries to warn him to be careful because he feels that the other students will come with everything and will fight in a serious way. On the other side, they get thoughtful about what the protagonist plans, since everyone there is thinking that he's a weakling, because even if he's good with the sword, he has no magic at all. Then he draws his staff and tells them to stop talking nonsense, and asks who will be the first to face him. Then these stuck-up guys keep deciding who will be the first, since nobody wants to face Li Luo because he's weak. And finally they decide that Yang will be the first to fight. He even mentions that it will be a bit embarrassing to beat a weakling. This blondie also mentions for him to take it easy, otherwise the battle will end too quickly. Then you already know, right? Remember that phrase, the talker gets in trouble. So, going back to the story, both fighters rush towards each other. The protagonist's opponent mentions that he's very slow. However, even before he finishes his speech, the protagonist disappears from his field of vision, and when he manages to notice him, the protagonist is already preparing to hit him with his staff. Li Luo's speed is so great that he hits him without giving him a chance to dodge. The blow is so powerful that it makes him be thrown far away. Nobody believes what they're seeing. And some even mention that that thing saving itself looks like a person. The protagonist asked what he was going to say about his speed, and Yang, that strong warrior there of the 6th seal, he was thrown by his staff, making the fight end in seconds. Difa asks what's happening if by chance Yang had done that on purpose. It even seems that the fight was planned. Yufeng then explains that he underestimated his opponent and ended up being hit even before noticing. Liu then says that next time she's afraid that the protagonist will get too confident, since he will be able to defeat all these opponents easily. And the people around there hear her say that, and they think that she's putting too much faith in him because she still has romantic feelings for Li Luo. Yufeng says that she's talking nonsense. Zhao Kuo mocks this blow, and the fighter there gets embarrassed, saying that he was careless, that's why he couldn't dodge. Another student there from the 1st academy says that he will be the next. The teacher tells him not to lower his guard and fight seriously. Then the 2nd round begins. This fighter's name is Tai, and he already starts releasing his 5th grade fire resonance. Li Luo's colleagues get nervous. Then Tai rushes with his fire resonance, saying that if he manages to at least touch the protagonist, he will win. since his attack is extremely powerful and it's virtually impossible to dodge. And while the fire magic's about to touch the protagonist's face, he dodges at the highest speed. Then, Tai launches a rain of fire swords, and these blows follow the protagonist, making the dodge really very difficult. Then, without choices, Liluo needs to release his resonance, thus making everyone realize that he has magic. Thus, at that moment, his staff gets covered with water, and a large amount of steam fills the battlefield, making it so that Tai can't see anything. And when he least expects, the protagonist's staff emerges, but he managed to defend himself with his flaming sword. However, the protagonist's water resonance is stronger, and ends up causing a powerful impact on Tai, and he asks himself what's happening. Then the protagonist tells him to scram, because Liluo's water resonance ended up suppressing all of his fire resonance, thus making the protagonist win the second round. Again, nobody believes what has just happened. The weakest fighter had beaten 2 fighters. Yufeng mentions that this time the opponent didn't underestimate Liluo, and Difa said that she doesn't believe it, that something wrong must be happening there for Liluo to be able to win. The director said that that boy was born with empty resonance, and that, therefore, it was extremely difficult for him to be able to reach this type of power. But that, looking well at him now, it seems that this is no longer a problem, since he managed to cultivate water resonance. Liu gives a smile and shows that she's happy. She says that the academy will become even more interesting in the future, since Liluo will be an opponent for her. And Yufeng, he's dying of jealousy there in the background. The teacher of the first academy keeps asking himself if that boy used some forbidden magic to get the water resonance. And the protagonist's teacher defends talking for him not to talk nonsense. That just because he was born with empty resonance doesn't mean that it would be impossible for him to get one. And the director mentions that it really is possible, but that it's very rare for that to happen, but that it wasn't up to them to find that out. And then the last opponent of the first academy says that the protagonist has quite a few secrets, and that he was waiting for this battle until today to be able to show himself there to the other students for him to prove his value, but that he in no way would let Liluo win 3 battles. The protagonist says that he's very boring and asks if he's finished talking. It's this kind of character that we like, right? Few ideas. He gets extremely nervous and says that Liluo is arrogant. Then he releases his mountain resonance, the aggressive destruction of the tiger. Other students get admired with his power since his seal is of level 6, and that now Liluo is at an extreme disadvantage. He rushes towards the protagonist and he manages to block. The boy says that the water resonance is only at level 5, and that all he can do is try to defend himself. The students get surprised for the protagonist having managed to defend that attack, which seems to be very strong. Zhao Kuo comments that Liluo seems very calm using his resonance, that it's as if he had already trained for many and many years. While they exchange attacks, he comments that the protagonist seems to be getting even more powerful. Then he uses his advanced manifestation art, Polar Piercing, and rushes with the spear in order to kill the protagonist. However, the protagonist's staff shines even stronger and hits him right in the face, making him fly away just like the first fighter. Nobody seems to believe what's happening. Then everyone starts shouting that Liluo won against all 3 opponents. The students get in shock because Liluo defeated the 3 level 6 warriors alone. Even Difa, who was in doubt about how he got those resonances, got astonished for the protagonist having gained a lot of strength. Yufeng says that artificial manifestations may be rare, but it doesn't mean that they don't exist. She admits that the protagonist's parents are geniuses, and that therefore it wouldn't be impossible for him to have gotten an acquired resonance. Difa gets admired with the fight she has just seen, and her brother scolds her, saying that she doesn't get impressed with level 5 and 6 magic. Then, embarrassed, she says that it's true, that they're just weaklings, and that Liluo won't be able to reach them in such a short period of time, and that, because of this, he won't be able to enter Rolling Star College. Then Liluo walks away and says good morning to the director, and that teacher, the one from the first academy, asks if his empty resonance problem was solved, and the protagonist replies that yes. Then the teacher says that his resonance is still weak and that he must work hard to someday be a little relevant, and Liluo tells him not to worry about that, since the levels of resonance don't determine anything. The level of the manifestations doesn't prevent him from being a duke or even of king class. And the teacher says that it's impossible to reach the king class with level 5 magic, and that nobody has achieved this feat. The director says that little time is left for the final exam, and if he wants to achieve something, he needs to train even more to reach the others. And he replies that he understands that. Then the director takes advantage that all the students are gathered there and makes an announcement for them. The director says that only those who have level 7 resonance will be accepted to take the tests. Then everyone gets scared because very few students reach grade 7, and the protagonist realizes that if he wants to qualify, he will need to train even more to evolve his light and water resonance. Lu congratulates the young master, and he gets all embarrassed, nervous there in the corner. She asks if he'll continue running away from her, and he replies that he won't. He then says that currently she's the best student of the academy, and that if he wants to claim this position again, he needs to defeat her. Before, she didn't propose this duel because he had no resonance at all, but now that he managed to solve this problem, he has the right to claim what is his. Kind of embarrassed, he says that it's all right and that he will do his best. The girl says that she'll be waiting for him. In recent years, all the fascination she had for him decreased considerably. And then if he has a chance to beat her, he must grab it with all his might. This gives us to understand that Lu still has romantic feelings for him, and we realize that a love triangle is being built. Then stay tuned in the next parts that we will see more about this romance. The protagonist feels that he offended her and mentions that the more beautiful the girl is, the more complicated she is. Then he watches Yu Feng offending him there in the corner with the look of hate. Then he tells that boy that if he wants to curse him, that he does it out loud because he's looking like a rat there, eating the trash, talking like that. Back at Luolan House, the news spread quickly. The young master defeated the level 6 students, and everyone there keeps asking if he'll be able to reach level 7 to be able to take these exams, since there's very little time left. The protagonist keeps thinking that if it weren't for the light resonance, he wouldn't have won that last battle against the bully. That's why he needs to evolve both resonances equally, since the light resonance is also very powerful. Then he decides to go to Miss Kai. The assistant is quite tired because of the work. She's complaining of pain in her shoulders. Then as her breasts are very big, she supports them on the table. However, at that moment, the young master arrives and watches all that scene. Both get embarrassed, and she yells for him to knock on the door before entering, and she asks what he wants. Then he says that he would like to show a treasure. Honestly, I don't know what she thought, but she was already pointing a gun at him, saying that his strength is in his resonance. He said that she understood everything wrong. Then she asks what treasure is this that he's talking about. He releases then his frigid magic and says that he got this resonance technique. She gets shocked to see that, and asks if it was thanks to the item left by his parents. And he says yes. However, it's at level 5 still, and it's very weak. She congratulates him and says that if Jiang finds out, she'll be very happy for him. At that moment, she gets embarrassed for him having seen her in that position. Then he told her that he needs more potions, and she replies that she already expected that. He's very cautious because he wouldn't want anyone to know that he would only be able to evolve his resonance through potions and items. He doesn't want anyone to know that. Then she said that she'll prepare something satisfactory for him. Upon seeing that he got surprised, she asked if he expected her to say no. She said that she wouldn't refuse to buy these potions, since now that he has a powerful manifestation, they need to do everything so that he gets even stronger, because the future of the house depends on that. He says that she's very thoughtful, and asks her to arrange a dozen of these magical potions, now of level 6. She said that she can even get it, but if he needs more expensive potions like that, they won't have enough money to pay, and they would have to sell some properties. He says that he will leave everything in her responsibility because she's quite reliable, and that he will support any decision she makes. Then she thanks him for having placed such trust. Li Luo also asks her to take him to the places where these potions are made. Since he has water resonance, that's how he learned how these potions are made. Already at Southwind Academy, the teacher announced that they received the 10 golden leaves, and that now they need to train even more to be worth it. He said that all these leaves were conquered by Li Luo, and the girls there get in love upon seeing him, saying that they would like a date. His friend smiles as if saying, "Take that." And after the class, the protagonist talks with his teacher. He said that the boy needs to train a lot to be accepted at Rolling Star Academy, and that if he dedicates himself a lot, he has a chance to succeed. Back at his house, his assistant asks if he has already eaten, because she prepared a snack for him. The protagonist gets quite happy, and says that the person who she marries will be very lucky. Then she gives a provocative smile, and said that he's being flattering. Then Miss Kai explains that, to refine the magical spiritual light, the city of Luolan established a specialized institution called Chang House. This institution is very famous in the magical spiritual light market of Daxia. At the entrance, she explains that this establishment brings quite a bit of profit to their house, and therefore Pei Hao has been fighting a lot to be able to conquer this refining house. He even hired the vice president to try to take part of it, and that ended up affecting the production of potions this year. The protagonist gets nervous and starts cursing, saying that he'll pay for everything. Li Luo mentions then that the food was delicious, but that now that they talked about Pei Hao, it ended up getting bitter. He passes there with the carriage through the bustling crowd of the city of Namfeng, and they stop somewhere in the north of the city. Miss Kai had taken him to this establishment that refines the magical potions. And when they arrive there, they are received by 2 people. Then his assistant explains who they are. The girl is called Liu, and she's an excellent student at Rolling Star College. She's a Master of Fire of 4th grade. And she's also a great friend of Zhang, and she can even be considered Zhang's substitute, should an urgency occur. And this other gentleman is called Chuang, and he's the vice president who works for Pei Hao. This gentleman then welcomes the young master and says that the boy's visit cheered the whole place. Very fake, this guy, right? Then his assistant warns silently that the vice president is acting strangely. She asks what's so special for the young master to come visit this place, since it's his property. Then the vice president gives a laugh and says that he expressed himself poorly. The protagonist soon realizes that this gentleman is on Pei Hao's side. Then the girl asks the assistant what she's doing there today, and Miss Kai explains that she came to show the place to Li Luo. Then the protagonist, shameless, keeps looking at the breasts of the 2 girls and keeps comparing their size, and he ends up letting slip an inopportune comment. And the girl there, Lu, asks what is he comparing. The protagonist then gives an excuse saying that it's rare to see 2 beauties of the elite being side by side, and that such beauty left him breathless. The girl says that he's shameless. Then she calls them for a walk through the facilities. Then she starts explaining in detail how it works there, and what items they have to sell and what items they produce. She says that Chiang House has 2 magics of 4th grade, 9 magics of 3rd grade, and 16 magical lights of 2nd grade, and 13 magical lights of 1st grade. The protagonist realizes that his assistant already knew all this information, and that the girl there only said that so that he would also know. He also comments that as she's a friend of Jiang, she may even be cold, but she's really very cool. And to finish the tour, she shows her workplace, and she ends up asking if they came there only to take a look.